Devonte Price was 34 years old when the woman who left him for not being enough sent him a wedding invitation. Handwritten, gold lettering, her new last name printed like a verdict. For 4 years he had loved Camille completely. Then she sat across from him, calm as a closing statement, and told him she needed someone who had already arrived. What she didn't know, what nobody knew, was that while she was planning a wedding to a man she considered the better investment, Devonte had quietly built a private real estate empire worth millions, operating entirely under a company name she had never heard. She invited him to watch her win. She pictured him arriving in the same worn truck, sitting somewhere toward the back, finally understanding what he had cost himself. Instead, on the afternoon of her wedding, while 200 guests watched her walk down the aisle, 3 black SUVs rolled through the estate entrance in clean formation. 4 men in dark suits stepped out. And then, Devonte stepped out last. What happened when Camille saw him through that iron partition, mid-aisle, in front of everyone she had ever tried to impress, would change both their lives in ways neither of them could take back. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The sun was barely up. Devonte Price sat at his kitchen table, in the pale gray light of early morning, still wearing yesterday's clothes. A half-eaten plate of eggs had gone cold beside him. He hadn't touched them in an hour. His eyes were moving across a stack of acquisition documents, page after page of zoning maps, environmental assessments, and title reports, the way another man might read a novel he already loved, carefully, hungrily, like every detail mattered, because every detail did. The house around him was quiet. From the outside, it looked like a well-kept craftsman in a modest Pasadena neighborhood. Nothing flashy, nothing that announced itself. But inside, it was something else entirely. Dark hardwood floors that caught the morning light, built-in shelves lined with architecture books, and financial texts with cracked spines. A kitchen with equipment that a chef would recognize and a guest would not. The house didn't perform wealth. It simply had it, settled and unhurried, the way everything Devonte owned seemed to exist, present without needing to be noticed. He was 34 years old. He had grown up 6 miles south of here in Inglewood, in a house that smelled like pine sol and Sunday cooking, raised by his Aunt Nadine after his mother passed when he was 9. He had worked construction through his 20s, pouring concrete, reading blueprints, learning the bones of buildings from the ground up, while attending night school 3 times a week. He got his real estate license at 27, his broker's license at 29, and then, quietly, with the kind of patience that most people confuse with slowness, he built Ironside Capital, 12 residential developments across Southern California, 2 commercial properties in Atlanta. The company held assets north of $40 million and appeared in no press release, no Forbes mention, no industry profile connected to his name. He had structured it that way deliberately, a network of LLCs and holding entities that kept his name one layer back from everything visible. People in the industry knew Ironside. Almost none of them knew Devonte. He preferred it that way. He had learned early that the most dangerous position was the one nobody was watching. He turned a page in the report, made a note in the margin, reached for his coffee without looking up. The mail slot in the front door opened and closed with a soft metallic snap. He didn't move immediately. He finished his note, capped the pen, and pushed back from the table. The stack of envelopes on the foyer floor was small. A utility statement, a contractor invoice, a cream-colored envelope near the bottom, heavier than the others, with his name written across the front in a handwriting he recognized before he fully registered that he recognized it. He stood still for a moment. Then he picked it up. The envelope was thick, high-quality cardstock, the kind that costs more than it needs to. His name was written in Camille's looping, deliberate script, the same hand that used to leave notes on the counter when she left early for work. He turned it over. The return address was Ladera Heights. He opened it. "You are cordially invited to celebrate the union of Camille Denise Morton and Broderick James Ashworth." He read it once, set it on the kitchen counter, poured the rest of his cold coffee down the drain, and made a fresh cup. Then he came back and read it again. Then a third time, slower, as though he were looking for something between the lines. He almost dropped it in the recycling bin under the sink. His hand moved that direction, stopped. He set the invitation on the table instead, beside the acquisition documents, and stood there looking at it. He wasn't angry. He wasn't sad. He was simply still. The way he got still when a situation required him to understand it completely before he decided what to do with it. His phone buzzed. A message from Petra Voss, his corporate attorney. A routine flag on the Culver City file. A mid-size commercial property his firm had been circling for months. The kind of acquisition that would close quietly and profitably if the due diligence held up. Petra had attached a summary update. Seller's legal representation confirmed. Attorney of record, Broderick J. Ashworth, Ashworth and Crane, LLP. Devante read it once. He set the phone down next to the wedding invitation. He looked at both of them. The cream envelope with Camille's handwriting. The report with Broderick's name in plain black text. He stood at that kitchen table in the early morning light. Yesterday's clothes, cold eggs, $40 million of real estate holdings that nobody had thought to look for, and he let the full shape of the situation take form in his mind. Broderick Ashworth was the attorney for a property group that was desperate to close. Ironside Capital was the only buyer with the capital and the speed to do it. And Broderick had no idea who he was dealing with. Not yet. Devante picked up his phone. He pulled up Jerome's number. "Clear my calendar for the 15th, he said. When Jerome picked up on the second ring, his voice was even, unhurried. "And I'll need the full detail." He ended the call, set the phone down, looked at the invitation one more time. He wasn't going to grieve. That chapter was already closed. He was going to begin. Devante closed the acquisition folder and pushed it to the side of the table. He poured a second cup of coffee and sat back in his chair. The kitchen was quiet. Morning light had shifted from gray to gold, falling across the table in a long, warm strip. The wedding invitation was still there. He picked it up again, looked at Camille's handwriting, and then, without meaning to, without wanting to, the memory arrived. 3 years ago. A Tuesday night, in October. He had driven home from the bid meeting in silence. No music, no phone calls, just the sound of the freeway and the particular emptiness that follows a loss you worked too hard for. The subcontract would have been his biggest job to date. A commercial site in El Segundo. He had spent 11 days putting the numbers together. He had been underbid by a larger outfit with cheaper labor. That was the whole story. Simple and clean and brutal. He came through the front door of the apartment they shared in Culver City and knew immediately that something was wrong. Not from anything he saw, from the quality of the silence. Camille was sitting on the couch. She was not reading. She was not on her phone. She was just sitting, her hands folded in her lap, the way people sit when they have already decided how a conversation will go and are simply waiting for it to start. She looked up when he came in. She did not ask how the bid went. That was when he knew. "Sit down," she said. Gentle, almost kind. He sat in the chair across from. He did not take off his jacket. She took a breath. "I've been thinking for a while about where we are, where we're going. And I think you're a good man, Devante. I really do. But good isn't enough. Not for what I need." He watched her. He said nothing. "I need someone who's already arrived," she said. Her voice was steady. She had rehearsed this, or something close to it. "I can't keep investing in potential. I've been doing that for 4 years, and I love you, but I'm tired of waiting to see how it turns out. You think I'm going nowhere, he said. It wasn't an accusation. He just wanted to hear her say the real thing. She looked at him carefully. I think you might get there eventually, she said, but eventually isn't now, and I need now. She mentioned Broderick that night, not as a confession, more like an illustration. A man from her professional network, an attorney, already a senior partner, already settled. She said his name the way people mention a landmark to explain a direction. There is a life that looks like this. That is the direction I am going. She was not cruel about it. That was the part Devante turned over for months afterward. She was not mean or cold or dismissive. She was simply final, the way a door is final when it closes and the latch catches. He could hear the click of it clearly. He did not beg. He did not argue. He did not tell her she was wrong, even though he believed, in the quiet, certain place where he kept his truest assessments, that she was making a serious mistake. He simply nodded. He told her he understood. And he meant it, not because she was right, but because he could see exactly what she was choosing. And he respected himself too much to fight for a place in a life where he had already been measured and found lacking. He slept on a friend's couch for 2 weeks. Then he got an apartment. Then he got to work. His phone rang. Aunt Nadine. He picked up on the second ring. You got the invitation, she said. It wasn't a question. This morning, he said. She was quiet for a moment. He could hear her morning program playing low in the background, the same gospel station she had listened to every morning for 20 years. I've been holding something, she said. I didn't know when to tell you. I was waiting until you were ready to use it instead of being hurt by it. He straightened slightly. Tell me, you remember Diane and I still talk sometimes. Camille's mother. She mentioned something to me months back. Didn't think anything of it, I suppose, or thought I already knew. A mutual friend of theirs saw Camille and Broderick at a charity event. Together. Not as colleagues. She paused. This was 3 months before she broke things off with you, baby. Devante was still. She was already with him, Nadine said quietly. She didn't leave because she lost faith in you. She left because she had already landed somewhere else and needed the door to close clean. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Outside, a car moved slowly down the street. A sprinkler started up somewhere in the neighbor's yard. Okay, he said finally. Thank you for telling me. You all right? Yes, he said. And he meant that too. He sat at the table after they hung up, the invitation in one hand, the facts arranged neatly in his mind. She had not left him out of honest disappointment. She had left him for someone she had already chosen, and dressed the exit in the language of principle so it would look, to him and to herself, like a decision made with integrity. He picked up his phone and called Petra. The Culver City file, he said. I want to accelerate the timeline. All meetings, all sessions, schedule everything after the 15th. Any particular reason for the delay? Petra asked. I have something to attend to first, he said. The suit was the first decision of the morning. Devante laid it across the bed the night before, midnight charcoal, Tom Ford, 3 pieces, and looked at it for a moment before turning off the light. Not because he was uncertain, because he wanted to be sure it was right before he stopped thinking about it. It was right. He dressed slowly. No rush. The kind of slowness that comes not from hesitation, but from a man who has nowhere to be until he decides to be there. He buttoned each button from the bottom up. He straightened his collar once. He looked at himself in the mirror for exactly as long as it took to confirm that nothing needed adjusting. No pocket square. No flash. Just cut and fit. And the particular stillness of a man who has nothing left to prove to the mirror. Jerome arrived at 8:15. He knocked once and let himself in with the key Devante had given him years ago, before Ironside had offices, back when the operation ran out of a second bedroom and Devante's dining room table. 3 black SUVs sat in the driveway in a clean line, engines off, dark as iron in the morning light. Jerome looked at him when he came down the stairs, took one look, and said nothing. That was Jerome. He understood what the suit meant without needing it explained. "One instruction," Devante said. Jerome waited. "We arrive when the processional starts. Not before, not after." Jerome nodded slowly, the way he nodded when something made complete sense to him. "Fourth row?" "Fourth row," Devante said. Jerome went back outside. Devante poured the last of his coffee into a travel cup, picked up his phone, and walked out of the house. The estate sat behind wrought iron gates on a quiet Pasadena street, the kind of property that had been built to impress people in another century and had not stopped trying. White florals lined every surface that could hold them, imported from somewhere up the coast, someone had said in the program. A string quartet played near the garden entrance. The afternoon light was perfect and golden, and Devante suspected Camille had researched that too. 200 guests had filled every seat, the left side, the right side, the overflow chairs along the garden wall. People in their best clothes, holding programs, speaking in the low, pleased murmur of guests who have arrived early to something beautiful. Devante's detail held position in the vehicles on the main drive, outside the estate's iron perimeter, engines running quiet. Jerome had eyes on the garden entrance. He knew when the doors opened. He reached back and touched Devante's arm once. Devante looked up from his phone and nodded. The first vehicle began to move. Inside the garden, the string quartet shifted into the processional. Every guest rose. The garden doors opened, and Camille appeared at the top of the aisle with the composed, luminous certainty of a woman executing a moment she had run through her mind 100 times. Her dress was ivory. The veil was set exactly right. The bouquet sat in her hands like she had been holding it forever. She was stunning. She took her first step, then her second. Her chin was lifted, her pace measured, and every eye in the garden had found her and held her. Then the sound came, low, deliberate, the unmistakable roll of heavy vehicles moving in formation, not fast, not slow, but steady and unhurried, the way large things move when they don't need to announce themselves, but announce themselves anyway, simply by existing. The heads on the left side of the garden turned first. Through the wrought iron partition that ran the length of the ceremony space, decorative iron, open enough to see through clearly, 3 black SUVs were pulling along the estate's main drive in a clean, even line. No sirens, no theater, just 3 large vehicles moving together with a precision that made the eyes follow before the brain had finished asking why. Camille was 6 rows in when the doors opened. 4 men stepped out of the second and third vehicles in a single, unhurried movement. Dark suits, earpieces, eyes already scanning, already working. Nothing rushed about it. Nothing performed, which was exactly what made it impossible to look away from. Then the lead vehicle's door opened. Devante stepped out last. He stood beside the vehicle for one moment, not posturing, not surveying, just present. He said something brief to Jerome. Jerome nodded and fell into step beside him, and together they moved toward the garden entrance with the easy, untroubled pace of men who are exactly where they intended to be. Her foot caught, not a fall, not even close, just a single half-step, a break in the careful rhythm she had rehearsed into muscle memory, there and gone in less than 2 seconds. But 2 seconds in front of 200 people is a very long time. Every guest on the left side saw it. The guests on the right side saw the left side react and turn to look. Broderick's mother, front row, saw it, and her expression tightened into the particular stillness of a woman who files things. Broderick saw it from the altar. He tracked the stumble. He followed her gaze toward the partition. He saw a man he did not yet know stepping out of a convoy with a private detail, and walking toward the garden entrance like he had somewhere important to be. Camille recovered. She lifted her chin. She found her pace. She did not look left again. Devante settled into the fourth row. Jerome took the row behind him. The ceremony continued. The officiant spoke. The vows were said with skill and conviction, and Camille held Broderick's hands and looked at him the way she had practiced, and it was all exactly what she had planned. When the officiant invited them to face their guests at the ceremony's close, Camille's eyes moved across the garden, and then they stopped. Fourth row, left side. Devante met her gaze and held it for one quiet moment. Then he gave her a single, small nod. Not grief. Not triumph. Not a message or a warning or a wound. Just a man who was exactly where he had chosen to be. The reception hall was everything the ceremony had promised, and then some. Long tables draped in white linen, candles burning low in glass vessels, a bar along the far wall that was already doing serious business. The string quartet had followed the guests inside and was working through something soft and elegant in the corner near the windows. The light was warm and amber. The room smelled like fresh flowers and expensive perfume, and the particular excitement of people who had dressed up and intended to enjoy it. Devante moved through it without difficulty. He found his seat at the assigned table, read the menu card, and ordered the fish. He accepted a glass of water and declined the champagne. He spoke to the couple seated to his left, a pleasant pair, friends of the family, no connection to anyone he knew, and listened more than he talked, the way he always did in rooms where the listening was more useful than the speaking. Jerome positioned himself 2 tables back, facing the room. He had a plate of food in front of him that he ate without appearing to eat, which was a skill Devante had never asked him about and never needed to. The convoy had already made its rounds through the conversation. Devante could feel it the way you feel weather before it arrives. Small glances from strangers who were trying to place him. A woman near the bar who leaned toward her husband and said something behind her hand. The particular energy of a room where something has happened, and everyone is trying to figure out what it means without admitting they noticed. He ate his fish. He was not unaware of any of it. Wade found him between the salad and the main course. He came across the room with his hand already extended, the way men do when they are genuinely excited about a handshake and cannot wait to begin it. He was broad-shouldered and loud in the comfortable way of someone who had never been told to quiet down and taken it seriously. Devante Price. He said it like a confirmation of something. Man, I thought that was you. Wade Calloway. We were both on the panel at the Pacific Coast CRE Forum last spring. You probably don't remember. There were 40 people on that panel. I remember, Devante said. He stood and shook Wade's hand. Firm, brief. Wade laughed like this was better than he expected. Ironside Capital. I have been telling people about that Inglewood acquisition package for 6 months. 6 months? Nobody around here knows your name, but anybody serious in the market knows that name. He shook his head with the particular admiration of a man who respected clean work. You are everywhere right now. What are you sitting on? 12 residential projects? 13, Devante said. As of last month. Wade laughed again and clapped him on the shoulder. 13. See, this is what I'm talking about. Major buyer, serious capital. I had no idea you had a connection to this family. Old friends, Devante said simply. Wade was already half-turned to gesture at someone across the room. I have to introduce you to someone. Hold on. Broderick had been watching for the last 40 seconds. He was standing 12 feet away near the head table, a glass of champagne in one hand, and a conversation he was no longer part of in the other. His mouth still held the shape of the smile he had been wearing. His eyes were doing something else entirely. He had heard the name, Ironside Capital. And now, he was doing what intelligent men do when a piece of information lands that contradicts everything they assumed. He was recalculating fast and quietly. and without letting it reach his face. The convoy, the detail, the stumble on the aisle, Camille's expression when she reached the altar. All of it was assembling into a single picture now, and the picture was not one he had prepared for. His smile held. He was a professional. But the champagne glass rotated once in his fingers, a small, unconscious movement, and his eyes moved from Wade to Devante and stayed there a beat too long. From across the room, Camille saw it. She did not know what she was seeing exactly, but she saw her husband's attention snag on something and hold. She followed his gaze to Devante, to Wade's hand on Devante's shoulder, to the easy way Devante stood in the middle of the room, receiving admiration like it was nothing unusual, like it was simply where he existed. And something settled in her chest that she could not name, cold and still, the way water goes still before something moves beneath it. She set her champagne glass down. She found him near the terrace 30 minutes later. He was standing at the stone railing with the evening air behind him, looking out at the garden where the ceremony had been. The chairs were still arranged in their rows. The florals were still lit. She approached him carefully, the way you approach something you are not entirely sure of. "I'm glad you came," she said. He turned and looked at her. He did not say anything right away. He let the words sit between them for a moment, the way you let something sit when you want to see what it weighs. "You look exactly how you planned to," he said. She searched his face. There was nothing to find there that she could use. She waited for more. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it once, and something in his expression shifted. Not urgency exactly, but focus. The particular focus of a man whose attention has a better place to be. "I have to take this," he said. "Excuse me." He stepped off the terrace and raised the phone to his ear, and was already talking before the distance between them was more than 10 feet. She stood at the railing alone with the question she had come to ask, the one she had been rearranging for 3 hours, trying to find a version of it that didn't expose how much she needed the answer, still sitting unasked in her chest, heavier than when she arrived. He found Jerome near the side entrance an hour before the dinner finished. "Bring them around," he said. Jerome nodded once and stepped away. Devante did not cross the room to find Camille. He did not seek out Broderick. He retrieved his jacket from the coat check, walked through the side entrance into the cool Pasadena night, and stepped into the lead vehicle when it pulled forward. The door closed. The 3 SUVs pulled away from the estate in the same clean formation they had arrived in. Unhurried, deliberate. Already gone before most of the guests had noticed he was no longer there. Inside the hall, the band had started. The dance floor was filling. Champagne was being poured. Somewhere in all of it, Camille looked toward the terrace. The railing was empty. She turned back to the room. She picked up her glass. She smiled at someone who was looking at her, because that was what you did. But the cold thing in her chest did not move. The Ironside Capitol offices occupied the top floor of a low-profile building on Washington Boulevard. No lobby signage, no branded glass, nothing that announced itself to the street below. From the outside, it looked like a mid-sized accounting firm. From the inside, it looked like exactly what it was, a place where serious work happened without any interest in being observed. Devante arrived at 7:45. The parking structure was mostly empty. The elevator moved without music. Petra was already there. She was seated at the head of the conference table with the acquisition file spread across the surface in the particular organized way that was entirely hers. Documents arranged by category, flagged pages turned face up, a yellow legal pad with dense handwritten notes sitting at her right hand. She had a coffee. She had not touched it. She looked up when he walked in. "Close the door," she said. He closed the door. She did not ease into it. That was not how Petra worked. She pulled the first flagged document from the center of the spread and placed it in front of the chair across from her. "Sit down," she said. "This is going to take a few minutes." He sat. He looked at the document. It was a transaction record from 22 months ago. A personal indemnification agreement. Single-spaced, 6 pages. The guarantee, she said, is for $600,000. Signed through a personal holding vehicle, Ashworth Private Holdings, LLC, filed in Delaware. No public record connecting it to Broderick directly, unless you know what you're looking for. She tapped the signature page. We know what we were looking for. Devante looked at the signature. Then he looked at the date. 22 months ago, he said. 22 months ago, Petra confirmed. He was backstopping a portion of the property group's debt. The original deal structure assumed a 90-day flip. It didn't close in 90 days. It didn't close in 6 months. It is now, as you know, still open. And the underlying asset has lost 14% of its projected value since the guarantee was signed. She pulled a second document, a financial exposure summary she had prepared herself, clean and precise. If this deal closes at or near the number his clients need, she said, the guarantee stays dormant. He never has to touch it. His clients get out. He gets his fee. Nobody looks too hard at the paperwork. But if we negotiate correctly, Devante said, if the deal closes significantly below their ask, which the asset's current condition fully justifies, the debt gap triggers the guarantee. He would be personally liable. She set the exposure summary down flat. $600,000 out of his own pocket. The room was quiet. The city moved 14 floors below them, indifferent. That's not the larger problem, Petra said. She pulled a third document, a copy of the partnership agreement from Broderick's firm, tabbed at 2 sections. His firm's conflict disclosure register requires any attorney to report personal financial interests in transactions where they are also serving as legal counsel. That requirement has existed in their partnership agreement since 2019. She set it in front of him. He never filed it. Not when he signed the guarantee. Not when the deal stalled. Not at any point in the last 22 months. She let that sit. Under their partnership agreement, failing to disclose a personal financial stake while billing active representation hours to the same client is grounds for a formal ethics inquiry. It is also, under the timeline of the documents, an event that predates his current elevation review by 14 months. She paused. Meaning the managing partners who are preparing to make him a senior partner have been doing so without knowing this exists. Devante had not changed his expression once since she began. He was watching her the way he watched everything, fully, quietly, without offering her anything to read. She folded her hands on the table. That is the complete picture. The silence that followed was not uncomfortable. It was the silence of a man who had already understood the room and was simply letting it settle before he spoke. "What do you need from me?" he said, "to negotiate this deal correctly?" Petra looked at him. "Authorization to proceed on standard terms. We go line by line. We push on everything the asset's condition justifies pushing on. No favoritism, no acceleration, no artificial pressure." She paused. "And when the time comes for required disclosures, we file everything. By the book. Every document, every obligation, every party with a stake. As required," Devante said. "As required," she said. "Nothing beyond that. Nothing outside the normal process." He nodded once. "When the disclosure package is due, you file it complete. Every required recipient." "Every required recipient," she confirmed. He pushed back from the table and stood. He walked to the window at the far end of the room, the one that faced west, toward the skyline that had been going up and coming down around this building for decades. He had looked at this view more times than he could count. He had sat in that conference room when the company was 2 people and a spreadsheet. He had built every floor of what Ironside Capital was from this window's vantage point, piece by piece, without anyone writing a single word about it. He stood there for a long moment. "Proceed," he said. "Just do it right." The call came at 11:43 in the morning. Devante was at the desk in his home office, second floor, east-facing window, a view of the San Gabriel Mountains going pale in the mid-morning heat. He had 3 lease abstracts open in front of him and a red pen behind his ear that he had not used yet. The work was quiet. The house was quiet. He preferred it that way. His phone lit up on the corner of the desk. He looked at the name. Diane. He had not deleted the contact. He had not thought about deleting it. It was simply still there the way certain things stay. Not because you need them, but because removing them would be its own kind of decision. And he had never felt the need to make it. He picked up on the second ring. Diane, he said. Devante. Her voice came through warm and carefully arranged, the way it always had. The voice of a woman who had learned early that politeness was a tool and who had never stopped sharpening it. I hope I'm not interrupting anything. Not at all, he said. He set the red pen down. He was not going to need it for this. She moved through the pleasantries at a measured pace. How was he? It had been so long. The wedding was beautiful, wasn't it? And he let her move, offering enough in return to keep the rhythm going without giving her anything she could use. He knew what the call was. He had expected it. Not the exact day, not the exact hour, but the call itself. Yes, he had known it was coming the moment he stepped out of that vehicle on the wedding day and saw Diane standing near the estate entrance in a pale blue dress, her eyes going wide before she could arrange her face. She had placed him too late to intercept. He had seen that too. Now she was doing what she always did when information had moved past her control. She was reaching toward the source of it, with both hands wrapped in politeness. I have to say, she began. And here her voice shifted, just slightly. Still warm, but with something underneath it now, something careful. I saw you arriving, near the entrance. I didn't realize at first. I saw the cars, and I thought, a small, practiced laugh. Well, it was quite an entrance. I wasn't trying to make one, Devante said. Which was true. Of course not. A beat. People have been talking, though. Guests. I've gotten a few calls asking about you. I realized I didn't know what to tell them. Another pause, shorter this time. What exactly is it that you do now, Devante? There it was. He leaned back in his chair and looked out at the mountains. Real estate development, mostly, he said. Private equity on the investment side. I run a holding company called Ironside Capital. We do residential and commercial acquisitions across California and Atlanta. He said it the way he would say anything that was simply true, without emphasis, without performance. We're actually in the middle of closing something in Culver City right now. Commercial property. Good deal. The silence that followed lasted long enough that he could hear the particular quality of it. Not empty, but full. Full of arithmetic. Full of a woman recalculating every assumption she had held for 3 years and finding that the numbers were not coming out the way she had arranged them. That's wonderful, Diane said finally. Her voice had not changed on the surface. Underneath it, something had shifted in the way things shift when the ground moves and a person refuses to look down. Camille always said you had potential. She always believed in you. Devante looked at the mountains. She said the opposite, he replied. Still pleasant. Still completely even. But I appreciate the revision. Another silence. This one was shorter. Diane was not a woman who let silences run. But this one she did not fill immediately, and that meant it had landed. Well, she said, it really is wonderful to hear you're doing so well. I appreciate that, he said. Give my regards to your family. He ended the call. He set the phone face down on the desk and picked up the red pen. He looked at the lease abstract in front of him. A retail unit in Culver City, zoning classification, tenant improvement allowance, and read the same line twice before his eyes settled. He was not satisfied, exactly. Satisfaction implied he had been waiting for something to arrive. He had simply been working, and now the work had moved one step forward, the way it always did when the right information reached the right person at the right time. He had not needed to call Camille. He had not needed to arrange anything. He had simply answered the phone, told the truth, and let the truth go where it was going to go anyway. Somewhere across Pasadena, Diane was already dialing her daughter. She picked the place herself. A coffee shop on Colorado Boulevard, the kind with exposed brick and soft lighting and small round tables that made every conversation feel private. Then she changed her mind and asked if he had somewhere he preferred. He did. He named a quiet spot on Lake Avenue. Corner tables, good coffee. Nobody who knew either of them. She said that was fine. She arrived 11 minutes early. He could tell because her coffee was already half finished when he walked in, which meant she had been sitting long enough to need something to do with her hands. She was dressed carefully, not formally, but with the particular intention of someone who had stood in front of a closet for longer than she would admit. Soft colors, nothing that tried too hard, everything that tried exactly the right amount. She stood when she saw him. A reflex. She covered it by reaching for her cup. "Hey! Hey!" He pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. A server came. He ordered black coffee. He settled in without rushing and looked at her directly, the way he always had. Not as a challenge, just as a fact. This was how he looked at people. She had always found it difficult to hold. She held it this time. She had prepared for this. He could see the preparation in the way she opened, smooth and paced, her voice carrying the careful warmth of someone who had rehearsed the tone, if not the exact words. She told him she was proud of what he had built. That Ironside capital, everything she had heard. It was impressive. Genuinely. She told him she had always believed he had something in him, that she had never doubted his ability, only the timing. She told him she hoped they could move forward without hard feelings between them, that life was too short for that they had shared something real, and she wanted to honor that by being adults about where they were now. He let her finish. He nodded once. Then he asked, "Did you start seeing Broderick before we broke up?" The question landed cleanly. No edge on it, no weight added. Just the question, set down on the table between them like something he simply wanted to know. Her eyes moved, just briefly, to her cup, then back to him. "No," she said. "I met him a little after. It moved fast. Those things, they just happened sometimes." "Okay," he said. That was all. He picked up his coffee. He did not press. He did not repeat the question, or lean in, or let his face do anything that invited her to look closer at what he had just accepted. She studied him for a half-second. That particular look people give when they expect resistance and don't find any. Then she relaxed, just slightly, just enough. She did not know about the charity event. She did not know about the mutual friend who had seen her and Broderick arrive together, 3 months before she sat Devante down in their apartment and told him, calmly, finally, as though it were paperwork, that good wasn't enough anymore. She did not know that Aunt Nadine had held that information for the right moment and delivered it with the precision of someone who understood exactly what it was worth and exactly when it needed to be used. She had just looked him in the eye and lied to him, in a coffee shop on Lake Avenue, to a man who was going to sit across from her husband in a negotiation where the truthfulness of every document, every disclosure, every stated position would matter. Devante drank his coffee. They talked for another 20 minutes. It was almost easy. She asked about Ironside's portfolio, and he told her enough. The residential developments, the Atlanta properties, the growth over the last 3 years. He watched her absorbing each thing he said and understood, without needing to name it, what the absorption cost her. Not because he wanted it to cost her, but because truth has a weight, and she was the one who had to carry it now. Near the end, he mentioned, without particular emphasis, the way a man mentions something that is simply current, that his firm was in the middle of a significant commercial acquisition in Culver City. Commercial property deal. Substantial. He expected it to close within the next few weeks. He did not say the name of the seller's attorney. He did not need to. Her expression did not change, but something in the set of her shoulders did. A small, almost imperceptible adjustment, as if she had heard something she didn't know how to file yet. He said nothing more about it. He drove home on the 110 with the windows down and the midday heat pressing in from the west. He was not thinking about Camille. He was thinking about the three things he now knew with complete certainty. Camille had lied about the timeline. She had looked at him across a small table and said the words without flinching, and they were not true, and she believed he had no way of knowing that. Broderick had placed Harold's money, $200,000 of family trust, extended without question, extended the way you extend things to people who sit at your table and eat your food and call you family, into a deal he was mismanaging and had never told his wife. And the deal itself, every number, every disclosure, every term, was Devontae's to control. He merged onto the freeway. The mountains were sharp against the afternoon sky. The stage was set. The elevator opened on the 14th floor, and Devontae stepped out first. The hallway was quiet, carpeted, the kind of building where sound got swallowed before it could travel. Petra fell into step beside him without speaking, her portfolio under one arm, her eyes already forward. She had been in rooms like this 100 times. So had he. The conference room sat at the end of the hall, floor-to-ceiling glass on three sides, the city laid out below like something that belonged to whoever was willing to sit at the head of the table and wait long enough. Devontae took that seat. Petra sat to his right. The two Ironside development directors arranged themselves along the left side and opened their files. Nobody touched the water pitcher in the center of the table. They waited. Broderick's team arrived 4 minutes late. The door opened with the particular energy of people who have decided that arriving after the other side is a power move rather than a tell. 3 of them. Broderick, a junior associate named Collins, who carried too many folders, and a financial consultant whose name Devontae had already read in the disclosure package and set aside. Broderick moved through the room the way he moved through every room, with the easy, unhurried confidence of a man who had been the most credentialed person present so many times that he simply assumed it as a baseline. He shook hands around the table, starting with Petra, his grip firm, his eye contact practiced. When he reached Devontae, his smile was collegial and faintly warm, the particular warmth of a man performing respect for someone he has not yet decided whether to take seriously. Devontae Price, Broderick Ashworth. Good to finally put a face to the firm. Likewise, Devontae said. He gestured toward the chairs. Let's get started. The first session ran 3 hours and 12 minutes. Devontae's team moved through the offering package the way a surgeon moves through a body, not looking for something specific, just making sure every system was visible and accountable. The zoning variance on the north parcel, the deferred maintenance schedule buried in Appendix D that put $340,000 in outstanding HVAC work conveniently below the line. The environmental assessment that cited a Phase 1 study from 18 months ago without noting that a neighboring property had since flagged a soil issue that warranted a Phase 2. Broderick's team worked hard. He worked hardest of all. He was genuinely skilled. Devontae had read enough of his legal work in the disclosure package to know that, and he defended each line item with precision and a kind of breezy confidence that probably worked well against buyers who were impressed by his resume. It did not work well here. Collins was visibly tired by the second hour. The financial consultant stopped volunteering answers and started waiting to be asked. Broderick kept performing. But by the end of the first session, the offering package had 7 open items flagged for supplemental documentation, and the numbers that were supposed to justify the ask were sitting on the table, looking smaller than they had when the morning started. Petra called the recess at 12:47 p.m. 20 minutes, she said. Devante poured himself water and walked to the window. Below him, Culver City moved in the ordinary way of a Tuesday afternoon. Traffic, construction, people crossing streets without looking up. He watched it without seeing it. Behind him, he heard Broderick's team step into the hallway. The door closed. He did not turn around. He stood there for the full 20 minutes. When the second session began, Broderick's team sat down in the same chairs they had left. Same order. Same folders open. Broderick's expression was composed and professional, and almost exactly what it had been before the recess. Almost. There was something behind his eyes now that had not been there in the morning. Devante noticed it in the first 30 seconds and did not look at it again. He didn't need to. He recognized it, the rapid, involuntary audit of a man who has just received information he cannot unfold in public. The eyes moving a half-second behind the face, the smile landing just slightly after it should. Someone on the team had run the name during the break. Broderick knew. The second session was shorter, procedural. They worked through 3 of the 7 flagged items and tabled the remaining 4 pending supplemental documentation. Devante's team was thorough and unhurried. Broderick matched them point by point, but the ease from the morning was gone, replaced by something more controlled and more careful, which was its own kind of tell. Easy men don't become careful men in the middle of an afternoon without a reason. When Petra closed her portfolio and the room began to clear, Broderick stayed seated. He waited until the last person had stepped out and the glass door had swung shut behind them. Then he stood. He adjusted his cufflink, left, then right, and walked toward Devante with the measured pace of a man who had decided what he was going to say and how he was going to say it. "I want to be straightforward with you," Broderick said. His voice was quiet, steady. "I'm aware that you and Camille have a history. I want you to know. For me, this is strictly business. Nothing personal enters this room." Devante looked at him. "I've never made a business decision for personal reasons," he said. "I'm here because this acquisition makes financial sense for my firm. That's the only reason I'm sitting at this table." He picked up his portfolio. "I'll need a complete disclosure package by Thursday. All personal financial obligations connected to the underlying entity, guarantees, indemnifications, any personal holding vehicles with exposure to the deal. Standard requirement for a transaction at this level." He said it the way he would say it to anyone. Broderick nodded. "That's not a problem." "Good." Devante extended his hand. Thursday. They shook. Broderick's grip was the same as it had been that morning. Firm. Practiced. But it lasted a half-second longer than it should have. Devante rode the elevator down with Petra. They did not speak until the lobby. Broderick rode a separate elevator. Alone. The doors closed, and the city view disappeared behind brushed steel, and for the first time since 8 a.m., there was no room to perform for, no table to hold his posture at, no face that required him to be the version of himself he had spent 15 years constructing. He stood very still. His reflection looked back at him from the polished elevator door. Jacket straight, tie right, every external thing exactly where it was supposed to be. His face, finally, showed what it had been carrying since the recess. He did not sleep well that night. The disclosure package arrived at Petra's firm at 8:14 Thursday morning. She was already at her desk. She pulled the documents from the secure file transfer portal, printed the full stack, 41 pages, and laid them out across her conference table in the order she intended to read them. She worked with a yellow legal pad to her left and a black pen in her hand, and she did not stop until she had read every page twice. She called Devante at 9:22 a.m. "Come in," she said. He was there by 10. Petra did not greet him at the elevator. She was standing at the conference table when he walked through the door, one hand resting on a single page she had separated from the rest of the stack. She slid it toward him when he sat down. He read it once. "There it is," he said. "There it is," she said. The document was 22 months old. A personal indemnification guarantee signed by Broderick James Ashworth as an individual through a holding vehicle called BJA Property Solutions, LLC, a name that appeared nowhere on his firm's client roster and nowhere on the deal's official representation documents. The guarantee amount was $600,000. It backstopped a portion of the property group's underlying debt in the event the transaction failed to close or closed below a specified threshold. It had never been filed on his firm's conflict of interest register. Not when he signed it. Not at any point in the 22 months since. Petra set a second page beside the first, a billing record she had cross-referenced from the transaction's document history. It showed a client meeting billed by Broderick's firm to the property group, dated 5 days before the guarantee was signed. Same deal. Same parties. Same 30-day window. He was representing them and backstopping them at the same time, Devante said. Yes. And his partners had no idea. None. Devante was quiet for a moment. He looked at the 2 pages side by side. The guarantee on the left, the billing record on the right. The way a man looks at a thing when he is confirming what he already knew and making sure he feels nothing about the confirmation that does not belong there. File the disclosure, he said. I already have the routing prepared, Petra said. Every stakeholder on the investor roster. That's the requirement under the transaction terms. Then do it right. She nodded. She sat down. She routed the disclosure package to every party on the roster at 10:47 a.m., exactly as the transaction agreement required, with no editorializing, no cover letter, just the documents, clean, complete, and perfectly on time. One of those parties was Harold, listed on page 7 of the investor roster as a passive investor. $200,000. Harold did not call Broderick. He called his own attorney at 11:30, after he had read the document twice, and sat in his kitchen for 20 minutes in the particular silence of a man who is not deciding what to feel. He already knows what he feels, but is deciding what to do about it. Petra's disclosure routing did something else on its way through the transaction system. When the guarantee document was processed and cross-referenced against Broderick's firm's electronic compliance portal, a standard automated check that ran on all incoming transaction documents connected to the firm's registered matters, it flagged. The compliance system had no opinion about what it found. It simply identified a document bearing the signature of a named partner against a deal that partner was actively billing, with no corresponding conflict disclosure filing on record, and it generated an alert. The alert went to the firm's managing partners. They convened without Broderick that afternoon. The meeting lasted 2 hours. When they finally called him in, the 3 of them sat at one end of the table and he sat at the other, and they gave him the opportunity to explain. He explained it well. He was a skilled attorney, and he had been preparing his explanation since Tuesday evening, when the first corner of this started to feel unstable. He framed the guarantee as a personal investment decision entirely separate from his legal representation. He argued that BJA Property Solutions was a personal vehicle with no connection to the firm. He said the word unrelated 4 times. It did not survive the billing record. 5 days. The guarantee signed 5 days after a client meeting he had billed to the property group at his standard hourly rate. The timeline was in the documents, and the documents did not care how well he explained things. The managing partners did not raise their voices. They were professionals. They told him his senior partnership elevation, the milestone that had been 18 months in the making, the thing his entire professional identity had been organized around reaching, was being removed from the quarterly agenda. A formal ethics review would be conducted. He should retain outside counsel. He retained outside counsel before he left the building. He came home that evening and told Camille it was a technicality. She was in the kitchen when he walked in. She had already had a version of the conversation in her head. She could see it in the way he loosened his tie before he had finished closing the front door, the way he moved to the counter and poured himself 2 fingers of bourbon before he said anything. "There's a paperwork issue at the firm," he said. "A disclosure I should have filed. My partners flagged it. It's going to take some time to work through, but it's a technicality. It'll resolve." She watched him. "The deal in Culver City," she said. "The property group." "Yes. Did you put my uncle's money in that deal?" He set the glass down. He explained that Harold had come in as a willing investor with full information, that the upside was real at the time, that these things happen in real estate, timing shifts, projections move. It wasn't negligence. She let him finish. "Did you tell me?" she said. The question sat in the kitchen between them. He had not told her. She already knew he hadn't. She was asking so that he would have to say it. "I didn't want to complicate things," he said. She picked up her phone. Harold answered on the second ring. He listened to her explain that she had just found out, that she was sorry, that she had not known. She was crying before she finished the sentence, and she was not a woman who cried easily in front of people, even people she loved. But the sound that came out of her when Harold went quiet, not angry quiet, not the silence before a shout, but the deep, still quiet of a man who has understood something that cannot be understood loudly. That sound was not something she could hold back. "Uncle Harold," she said. He said her name. Just her name. The way you say someone's name when there is nothing else left to say that won't make it worse. She said she was sorry again. He said he knew she was. He did not say anything about Broderick. He did not have to. The silence had already said it. The silence of a man who had extended his trust like a gift, freely and without terms, to someone who sat at his table and called him family, and who had discovered that the gift was spent quietly, without his knowledge, in service of a deal he was never fully told the truth about. She hung up. She sat at the kitchen table of the home she had moved into 3 weeks ago as a married woman. The house was exactly what she had planned for. The right neighborhood, the right square footage, the right address for the life she had decided she deserved. She had walked through it with a measuring tape and a vision board and the particular satisfaction of a woman who had made the right choices and arrived exactly where she intended. She sat at that table now, and she added it up. What she had chosen, what she had been given, what she had not been told, what she had told herself anyway. The $200,000 that left Harold's account on nothing but family faith. The guarantee that lived in a document her husband signed and buried and never mentioned. The man she married who could explain anything and had not explained the things that mattered. She added all of it up. The columns did not balance. The doorbell rang at 6:42 in the evening. Devante was at the kitchen counter with a bowl of rice and a folder of zoning documents. He was not expecting anyone. He set the folder down, walked to the front door, and opened it. Camille stood on his porch. She was not dressed for anything. No performance tonight. No careful outfit. No armor. Just dark jeans and a cream blouse, and the face of a woman who had been carrying something heavy for days and had finally decided she was done carrying it alone. He read her face in about 2 seconds. He stepped aside without a word. She walked in. She stopped in the middle of his living room, and she looked. She couldn't help it. She just looked. The room was not loud about what it was. That was the first thing that registered. No flashy furniture, no art chosen to impress. Framed architectural plans on the walls. Actual working drawings, the kind that come off a drafting table, annotated in pencil. A leather sofa that had been broken in slowly and kept because it was worth keeping. Shelves of books with cracked spines. A home that had been built from the inside out, by a man who stopped needing an audience somewhere along the way and simply started buying things he liked. She stood there for a long moment. She was looking at the answer to a question she had asked 3 years ago. She had gotten the answer completely wrong. "You knew," she said. Her voice was steady. She had practiced being steady. "About Harold's money. You knew before I did." "I knew during diligence," he said. He had not moved from near the hallway. His voice was easy. Jerome ran background on the investor roster. Standard process. Harold's name was on page 7. "And you filed the disclosure." "I was required to." "So I did." She turned to face him. "You could have warned me. You're his wife." She heard it. The full weight of it. She was Broderick's wife. That was the boundary he had drawn, and he had drawn it correctly, and they both knew it. And neither of them said anything for a moment. "Why did you even come?" she said. "To the wedding." "Why?" He moved to the armchair across from the sofa and sat down. He took his time, not to make her wait, but because he was choosing his words the way he chose everything. Precisely. "You invited me to confirm I had lost," he said. "I wanted you to understand that you had the definition of losing wrong." She sat on the edge of the sofa. She set her hands in her lap. "Did you love me?" 4 years of my life," he said. "Yes. And now?" "Now I love the version of myself that kept building after you left." He said it simply. No cruelty in it. Just a true thing, stated plainly. The way he stated most things. That version didn't exist before you walked out. "I'm not grateful for what you did, but I'm honest enough to acknowledge what it made." She nodded slowly. She was absorbing it, processing it the way she processed most things. Quietly, methodically, looking for where the numbers reconciled. They weren't reconciling tonight. "I need to say something to you," he said, "and I need you to hear it straight." She looked at him. "You told me I hadn't arrived yet. When you left, you said I was still figuring out the basics. You were right. I hadn't arrived. That part was true." He leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees, eyes on hers. "But you left while you were already with him. You were at that charity event with Broderick 3 months before you sat across from me and told me you needed someone already arrived. You didn't leave because you lost faith in my future. You left because you had already made another choice, and you needed the exit to look like something other than what it was." She opened her mouth. He kept going, quiet and even. "A mistake is accidental. What you did was not accidental. You planned the next thing before you finished the current thing, and then you handed me a reason that sounded principled, so neither of us would have to call it what it actually was." He paused. "I'm not angry about it anymore. I'm telling you because you came here, and I think you came here because you wanted someone to tell you the truth for once, instead of managing you." The room was very quiet. She did not have an answer for it. She looked at her hands. She looked at the architectural drawings on the wall. She looked at the room that told the whole story of a man who had been dismissed and had simply decided, quietly and without anyone watching, to build something undeniable instead. She stayed another hour. They did not argue. They talked about small things, mostly. Old memories that still had warmth in them before everything got calculated. He made coffee. She drank half of hers. When she stood to leave, she looked at him for a moment, like she was going to say something important. She didn't. "Good night, Devante," she said. "Take care of yourself, Camille." She walked out. The front door closed behind her. He stood at the window and watched her headlights move down the driveway, turn onto the street, and disappear into the dark Pasadena evening. He stood there a moment after the lights were gone. He was not triumphant. There was nothing left in his chest that needed winning. The chapter was closed, not slammed, not torn out, just turned, the way you turn the last page of something that took a long time to finish, and finally, completely, has nothing left to say to you. He went back to the kitchen. He reheated his rice. He opened the zoning folder. He had work to do. 18 months later, Devante stood in Inglewood with a ceremonial shovel in his hands. The lot was 6 blocks from Aunt Nadine's house. He had driven past it his whole childhood. A chain-link lot, weeds in the cracks, a faded billboard for a phone company that no longer existed. Now it had a rendering board beside it that read, Ironside Capital Affordable Housing Initiative, Phase 1 in clean block letters, and a city councilwoman beside him who had become a genuine ally and was saying something into a microphone about community investment and long-term vision. He was not hiding anymore. He had built in silence because silence was what the early years required. You build in private, when the world hasn't decided what you are yet. You build in the open, when you no longer need their permission to know. Jerome stood 15 feet back, relaxed, watching the small crowd with the low, steady attention of a man who has spent years making sure Devante moved through the world without friction. He caught Devante's eye once and gave him the smallest nod. Nothing more was needed between them. Petra stood to the left of the podium in a gray coat, holding a coffee, looking at the rendering board with the expression of a woman who files paperwork correctly and watches it change things and considers that a perfectly satisfying way to spend a career. And Aunt Nadine stood beside him. She was wearing the good coat, the navy one she saved for occasions that mattered. She had been quiet since they arrived, which was not unusual for her. Nadine did not fill silence with noise. She filled it with presence, which was worth more. When the councilwoman finished speaking, and it was Devante's turn to step to the microphone, Nadine reached over and squeezed his arm. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. She had said everything that mattered years ago in a kitchen 6 blocks from where they were standing, to a boy who had lost his mother and was trying to figure out what came next. She had told him to become someone she didn't have to worry about. He had done that. He had done considerably more than that. He stepped to the microphone. He thanked the city. He thanked his team. He said the things that needed saying, short, clear, true. And then he picked up the ceremonial shovel and turned toward the lot, and the cameras came up, and the small crowd applauded, and the Inglewood skyline stretched out behind him exactly as it always had. The same streets, the same sky, the same city that raised him when he had nothing but time, and the particular stubbornness of someone who hadn't yet been told he was allowed to stop. He pressed the blade into the earth. He had never been the Brokex. He was just a man who hadn't finished yet. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.